All right.
Hi,
So
Sean.
I have an exciting class put together for you today. And like Joni said, it's something that's not talked about quite a lot because it's kind of, some people find it confusing. So I'm going to unconfuse it today. But I'll start by saying I hope you guys know the name of your instruments. Not just the name, but what is this thing that you play at home? What do you call these? Anybody? I
Virtual
see.
orchestras.
Perfect. Thank you. Right on that unmute button. Perfect. It is called a virtual orchestra. Some people call them organs, but you have so much more than organ sounds. However, today, your topic is going to be organ sounds. So we're going to talk about organs. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to give you some history. You'll learn something for sure. It doesn't matter what instrument you have, you will learn something. So if you have something really small, really big, you're going to get something out of it. So stay tuned, and this is a good class to, when it's recorded, you can watch over and over again because it's something that you'll be able to use, okay?
Okay,
So
I'm
I'm
going to
going
push
to
the record button before you start.
it's
And then,
recording. We're good.
oh, you already did it?
Of course, I'm on top of it. All
Oh,
right.
you are.
No. So, okay, without further ado, let me play a song first to get us going. I'm going to turn around here. Let's switch to this guy here. And let me get cozy. And I'm going to play a song that features the organ here. So just listen to this organ sound, and I'll tell you all about how we do this here. Okay, here we go. And see if you can guess the name of the song. At last, and have yourself a merry little Christmas. Just a nice little song of the season that I like a lot. That was played with the soul ballad style. If you like that, you can try that at home. That's a lot of
Soul
fun.
ballad.
Soul ballad. So let me do this here. And away we go. So before we start, since I'm going to be talking a lot about organs, I thought I'd give a little history on the organ. So I have something I want to put on the screen, but I need a volunteer today. I need somebody to read something aloud for me. So if somebody has a microphone and a camera, raise your hand or flop around so I can see you. It's 2 sentences. It's not much. I just need somebody to read it for me. Any volunteers? Any volunteers at all?
I can read it for
Okay,
you.
Jan. Thank you so much, Jan. Let me get you unmuted. And I'm going to spotlight you real quick and go ahead and read this history of the organ. This is the history of the first organ.
The Greek engineer Sibelius of Alexandria is credited with inventing the organ in the 3rd century BC. He devised an instrument called the hydraulis, which delivered a wind supply maintained through water pressure to a set of pipes. The hydraulis was played in the arenas of the Roman Empire.
Thank you so much, Jan. Everybody give Jan a round of applause here. I just figured I'd make somebody else read that because I couldn't pronounce the name. That's the only reason. So thank you, Jan, for pronouncing that name because I could not. So let me go back to that. I want to show you kind of what that looks like here. This is cool stuff. The first organ ever made, and there's a little kind of picture of it here. Hopefully you can see that. It looks pretty complicated. That doesn't look like an organ that we would think of, would it be? You know? So let me scroll down here, and this is kind of a diagram of how it works. Oh my goodness, thank gosh you don't have to do that on your organ, right? So basically it's a big tank filled with water, and the more water you put in it, the more air comes up through what are called pipes or flutes. Okay? So that's the first organ, how that's made. And now what are flutes? Let's see. Let's look at some more pictures. I got some pictures here. Well, actually, after using water, what people thought is, oh, let's use wind. Wind can work too. It's just like they're trying to figure out electricity here. They're trying to figure out how to make these things work. So they used wind, where you'd see that big fan there. You'd have wind blowing through a fan, and that air would be thrown through those pipes there. And then people said, well, what if there's no wind? What do? We can't play the organ. No, then they created something that you might recognize a little bit more. Something like that. That's called a pump organ, where instead of having wind, you pump the air into it. And the air goes through these little bitty and sometimes big pipes. So the reason they call them, well, they call them pipes and flutes, but let me show you a picture of this too, actually. I got all sorts of pictures. I have a whole slideshow here. But the air is blowing through things like this called flutes. And basically it works just like this. If you have, maybe as a kid, you had, when you finish your soda bottles, you go like this. I don't know if you could hear that or not. But it works just like that. You're blowing air through a tube, and it's creating sound. And you have big bottles, little bottles, and they all create a different sound. So the same with these pipes. You have all sorts of different ones. So in your organs at home, luckily, you don't have to stick all this stuff in there, right? It's all digital now. So we went from the Roman version, and then to wind, and then pump, and then now we do this all electronically for the most part here in our Lowry or ST organs. So this is just kind of an example of all these different types of pipes they use. And what we are most familiar with here that we use on our Lowrys and STs is this one right here, number 2. It says flutes. Okay, and you'll see some in your organ. If you're touching a lot of buttons, you might see some other words that look familiar, like this, which is the same as this. They're all just different shapes of the pipes, okay? So the sound travels through them differently and creates a different sound. Now, I just thought all that was interesting. It's nice to have a history, but let's talk about now how it works, okay? If you have a larger touchscreen instrument, you have what are called tabs, right? That's all these buttons that are going across the center here. They're called tabs. And on the Easy series, you have them as well. Like I said, this is for everybody. So I'm going to kind of go over here and hopefully not trip or spill any.
Hopefully he didn't just knock over all the equipment.
I
There he
figured
is.
that would happen. I unplugged the mixing board that I use, and I was like, because I tested it beforehand, I was switching it back and forth, and I figured, oh, this works great. And then of course, the cord got caught in the wheel of this contraption here. I'm sure that'll happen again, so just be ready for that. So, but it's worth it because I want to show you guys how this works here. So, on the Easy series and the Estes, your panels look like this. Something like that. That's your right hand sounds. We're going to be talking about the right hand mostly today here. So on your right hand, you have all sorts of different instruments to choose from. And on the left, you see a button. It's kind of separated from the rest of them, right? That's because you can turn it on independently. So keep this in mind. If you don't remember anything from today, just remember any of these organ sounds here, when you select this button, that's going to be playing on top of anything you have on the right side. So if you have a piano on, as long as both of those are lit, they're both going to be playing, okay? So it's not one or the other, it's both. So if you want the organ, but you don't want a piano, make sure you turn that off. Does that make sense? Because we have a lot of people, they say, oh, I want to play a piano sound. And maybe an organ's on and they don't realize, and they're like, this piano sounds weird. And that's because they're both playing together, so you might not want that. So if you want an organ sound, make sure you turn off all those other buttons and turn on organs. And that's it. Okay? So even all the way to the Discovery 3, if you have that, that's the entry-level Model 1 keyboard. And same with the Easy 1 and Easy 2, the very simple ones. You have that button that says organs. And you should have, I believe, 3 different organ sounds. And I hope you're taking notes. This is a good thing to write down what I'm about to say. In your organs button, you have several different types of organ, okay? The first one I'll talk about is called sweet. And sweet means Lowry, okay? Think of it that way. The sweet Lowry organ. So anytime you see the button that says sweet, that's the original Lowry organ sound. So if I were to play something like that, for an example, let's just do this. I'm going to just play an example of what the Lowry organ sounds like. Just a pretty sound. They just what they do is they put a whole combination of what I was talking about earlier, those different pipes and the flute combinations is what they're called, and I'm going to talk about that in depth in just a minute here. But what it automatically does is it puts together all those different flute sounds, organ flutes, and it combines different ones with different volumes, and it does it all for you. So just that one sound alone is a lot of different things going on at the same time. And you don't have to pump any water or air into it. It's digital. So the second one, so that's sweet Lowry organ. The second is called jazz organ. I like this one, and this is if you like Hammond organ sounds. That's the brand they were kind of modeled after. But we can't say that, because it's a different brand. But it's called jazz organ, okay? And that's modeled after Hammond. So if I were going to play something with that jazz organ, it's got a little bit of more of a percussive sound to it. So here's what that jazz organ sounds like. that's the jazz organ sound. And that just kind of compiles, again, a lot of different flute combinations and sounds from what would be a Hammond type organ. Now, if I go one more, there's one called pipe. Whoops, wrong button. There we go. Pipe. And this is for anything churchy. If you want to go to church at home, you can put on that pipe organ and go to church. Or you can go to the opera. You know, you can go to see the Phantom of the Opera, that is. So with the pipe organ, it sounds like this. Hoo-wee! That is fun. So that is 3 examples of even on the entry-level organs or virtual orchestras where you actually have these big sounding organs built in. Okay? So next, what I'm going to talk about here, well, first of all, just make sure you write down that the organ sounds are going to be always on top of whatever else you have. So remember that. They're combining sounds. So if you have a piano on the top here, if you touch the organ button, they're both going to be playing. So make sure you turn the other one off if you don't want both. Okay? All right, let's talk about how flutes work. And I'm going to be going back over here, and bear with me if it unplugs. I am sorry. I'm being very careful this time. Oh, there we go. Made it safely. Safe landing. All right. So how flutes work. Let's look at this. I think I have another picture I can put up here so you can see. Yeah. Okay. You see all these different pipes there, right? Those are called flutes. It's that type of pipe. A type of pipe is a flute. Okay. And you see how they're all different lengths, right? You see all these different flute lengths? You can see it, you can think about it this way. If you have a bottle this big, do you think this is going to sound, if I had a really tiny bottle like this big, do you think that's going to make a higher pitch sound or a lower when I blow in it? I see people pointing up. Yeah, the smaller the flute, the higher the pitch. Okay? And the reason I'm talking about this is because you're going to see some numbers in a second here. Let me go to this camera here, and I'm actually going to zoom in if I can here. And hopefully, again, I won't mess anything up. Ooh, that's a little closer. That's better. Okay, those should look familiar. If you have any larger sized instrument there, it's kind of a little bit blurry, but you get the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put on just a regular organ sound. I'm going to turn all these tabs off. So there shouldn't be any sound at all. See, I'm touching the keys. There's nothing playing. Okay? Turn off all this too. Okay, so if you can see the numbers, they're kind of hard to see. But from the left, you have 16, 8, 5 and 1/3, 4, 2 and 2/3, 2, and they go all the way down to 1. So this is how many feet long those flutes are that it's going to be playing through. So for example, I'm just going to touch flute 1. So that's the 1 foot flute. And I'm just going to touch any note here. I'll press a C. Can you guys hear that? If you have headphones, you might be able to. Turn it up a little bit. You hear that? That's a 1 foot flute by itself. If I go to the 16, which is a 16 foot flute, so a really big one, You hear that? If you have headphones, it's a little easier, but really, really low sound. So what all these presets in your organ are doing is they're turning on these different lengths of flutes. So that you have kind of a better sound. So it's combining all these. But you can kind of hear the difference as you go up this with these different ones. So let me try this real quick. Hopefully this is loud enough. I'm just going to touch, let's see, a note that you can see. G, here we go. And then I'm going to go through all of them so you can kind of hear the differences. Probably hard to hear the last one because it's so high-pitched, right? So that's just kind of how the flutes work. So imagine, like I said, blowing in big bottles versus little bottles, okay? I just wanted to kind of paint a picture of how those numbers work because people just say, what's the difference between 2, 4, and 10? Who knows? That is the difference, okay? So it's the size of the flute it's blowing through. So what's great, though, is you don't have to worry about all these, you know? You can, if you want to make it difficult for yourself, you can combine different ones by yourself and decide what you like. There's also a feature that on a lot of these touchscreen instruments called drawbars. Some people are going like that. I can see your faces. Drawbars. Let me see if I can get this camera pointed at the screen real quick. Okay. What drawbars are is depending on which, it's still blurry, but depending on which flutes you have on here, say if I have a couple of these on, they're just volume controls for them. So each flute you can have at different volumes. So all those different pipes you have, you can say, I want the low one to be really loud. I want the middle ones to be kind of softer. These ones to be a little louder. So you can really customize the sound of your organ. And that is really, really cool because, you know, in the past, you wouldn't be able to do that. You know, that's a really high-end feature. You know, a lot of stuff built in digitally to be able to do that. So for what's kind of cool is for each preset organ that's in these instruments, they have to know, Lowry has to know what this flute sounds like, what the second one sounds like, what the third one sounds like all by themselves, and then they put them all together, and then they fix all the levels for you. So there's a lot that goes into making these things. Some people say, why is this so expensive? It's just one finger chords, and, you know, it brings a Hank Williams sound on. That's it, right? No, there's a lot that you can do here. But like I said, that's just the kind of complicated way to think about it, and that's if you want to get really advanced. I'm going to show you now how to make it really simple, okay? And that is to use presets and setups. Those are the same thing, just depending on which instrument you have. You all have these. You have different ones set up. Even on the Easy 10, you have a song setup feature, right? If you have an Easy series. I think it's on the Easy 10. You might even have some on the Freedom 3, but I could be wrong. But if you go to Song Setup and you scroll backwards, so not A to Z, but if you scroll backwards as if you're going to Z, it actually gives you a bunch of good organ presets or organ setups just ready to go. You know, it'll give you different combinations of these flutes. Even though on your instrument it doesn't say flute tab 2, flute tab 16, or 3-foot flutes. It doesn't say that, but on the song setups, you actually have some thrown in there, some preset sounds, as well as the fanfare and journey. Even though those don't have tabs, they have all these different features. So what I'm going to talk about now is kind of going over to how to use the preset, so you don't have to do all this stuff I just talked about. Are there any questions so far, though, just so I'm not losing anybody? Hopefully this is interesting stuff. Hopefully it's things you can, you know, get something out of?
Play
The
with.
next part will be pretty useful. So
Elizabeth has a question.
go ahead, Elizabeth.
Back to the different sounds of the flutes. I don't find, I have the performer and I don't find the organ button. Do I
Yes,
have
it doesn't have the button. What the button is on the EC10 I was playing on, that's so it doesn't have to put those tabs. Your performer has tabs going across the front here. So
Okay.
instead of one button to turn them all off and on, it just says flute 16, 4, 10, things like that, because you can kind of turn them off and on individually.
Okay.
That makes
Thank
sense?
you.
Cool.
And
Go ahead,
Jeannie Marie has a question.
Oh, unmute. There we go. Go ahead.
This is clarification for me on my fanfare under organs. It has 8 plus 8 or 8 plus 4. Is that the same as the tabs that you were talking about?
Yes, that's exactly what that is. And that's what I was going to mention is, yeah, in the fanfare, journey, things like that, like I said, they kind of have preset sounds in your organs button. And that's what that's doing is it's putting together these tabs for you. Like it might say, flute 8 plus 4 or 4 plus 2. It's putting together those as if that's all you had on is 8 and 2.
Do those play? Do you press those buttons separately instead of like sweet or pipe, or do you press pipe and or sweet plus the 8 plus 4 plus 8 plus 3? Are those 8 plus 4s a totally different setting for the organ?
Yes, they're different settings.
So you don't have
can
to
go from, and they're all the same. Like sweet Lowry organ is also a combination of those. They just kind of branded it to say sweet rather than 8 plus 4 plus 6 plus 2 plus 1 plus, instead of putting all those numbers in there, they call it sweet. And then you can scroll and get another one that might be called flutes 8 and 4 or pipe organ or 2 plus 6. They give you different combinations.
So the 8 plus 4 is like another name for a setting. I don't push. Okay.
Correct. You got it. You got it, dude. All right. Any other questions? Hopefully it'll get easier from here. Usually we like to go easy and then difficult, but I'm kind of going a little bit backwards because I wanted to give you kind of what those flutes and what those sounds mean and what they're doing. And then now I'm going to give you an easy way to kind of access them. Okay, so I mentioned on the easy series, you have, hopefully you remember the 3 types. They're the 3 main types, which were sweet, which is kind of a Lowry organ. There's jazz, which is based on a Hammond organ, and the pipe organ, which is just any kind of pipe organ you'd play at a church. Now, what they do on these larger instruments, this is really fun, if you have any of these bank presets on the left side here, and I don't know if I can get this too much closer, but if you have what are called bank presets, and let's see if I even aimed this right. Close enough. It's on the bottom there. Let's do this. Woo-hoo! Okay. You have what are... Whoop, it's going too low. Okay, I'm going to give up on this camera. It's falling down. It's falling down. Forget that. So, basically, I'll show you from here. So, if I have the A bank on, you can write this down. A bank are all Lowry sounds as well. So, instead of just sweet, you get the A button plus 10 more right through here, 10 different Lowry organ presets. So like I said, it's just combining these different tabs sort of separately. See, as I push them, they all change lights, right? See that? Woo! Christmas. So what it's doing is it's putting all these different combinations of sounds together. And instead of just having one, which would be sweet, I get this A bank full of different good Lowry brand sounds. So just to kind of show you an example, I think they sound a little bit softer, so it's nice to play them with something, nice and soft, maybe with the easy button on like this. So kind of a nice, easy, mellow sound, I think, just depending on what type of music you're playing. But so to recap, the A bank, Lowry sounds. B bank, what are those? Some of you know, right? Somebody shout it out. What's in the B bank?
Is that Hammond?
Yes, exactly. The
Yes.
Hammond based sounds. So on a lot of them, you'll see the word jazz because that's our way of saying Hammond sounds is jazz organ because it was typically used for jazz music. So you can use, jazz or we can go Christmas. Let's try this. I've got some music here. Let's do this. I'm going to play through some of the Hammond sounds for you, kind of show you what those sound like. Let's go to just something like this. Here's Rudolph with the Hammond organ. It's too hard for me to sight read that and play through sounds at the same time, but you get the idea. A lot of good jazzy organ sounds. So, really great sounds. Those
Sean,
are my favorites.
We have a question in the chat that says, from Brenda, I didn't understand scrolling towards Z to reach a selection of organ sounds. Could you explain that?
Yes, I can. I can go back to the instrument too. I'm going to try to avoid it just so I don't get unplugged again, because I can already see it's twisted around the wheel a little bit. But basically, you touch song setup, and it gives you an alphabetical list of songs, right? So instead of scrolling up the list, you touch the down arrow. So right when you touch song setup, touch down, and instead of giving you songs, it actually lists several organ sounds. Okay, so just like what Jeannie was talking about earlier, where it gives you, different combinations. Organs 4 plus 2, 8 plus 4. It gives you different combinations of sounds, just that you can play with. So they're not song setups. You have to hit select on it, and it just brings up that sound rather than a whole song setup. Hopefully that makes a little more sense. But to recap, A bank is all those sweet Lowry songs. B bank is all those jazz, organ, or Hammond sounds. And my C bank is where I get, just like I mentioned on the EZ series, you get pipe organ. Pipes. And instead of just getting one, how many do I get? I'm just going to stand here frozen.
10. 10.
Close. You get 11. But you get, because there's the 0 position plus 10 buttons in the center here, so 10 extra.
Okay.
So you can use these to play, gosh, anything. They're obviously great for if you're playing hymns, things like that. So as you touch different numbers, 1 through 10, it gives you a different combination of these pipe sounds here. Okay, does that make sense? Try to keep it simple. You don't have to worry about all these tabs here. Let the instrument do it for you. See, all those different lights go up and down, on and off for you. So keep that in mind. Other than those 3 banks, those are your 3 organ banks, A, B, C. A, B, C. You also, if you have any categories, even on things like the Premier or, Legacy, Performer, as you said, you have what are called category presets. And some of them, if you check and see what you have at home, Some of them you might have some really good organ sounds in there. Like on this one, for example, and on some of even the smaller ones, there's one called Sacred. You know, you can use that as well for things to go to church to, and hymns. Gives you all sacred organ sounds. So it's going to give you a bunch of good things combined for cathedral or church. You have others. You have some that are called, there's one in this one called harmony organ. Again, gives you 10 more of those sounds. Smooth flutes. These are really pretty. You got a lot of smooth flutes. So rather than have the harsh, big pipe organ sounds, they're all nice and smooth flute sounds, where you could play things like this. Let's do something like this. Here we go. So you can have a nice happy new year with that type of sound there. Smooth flutes. So again, just combines all those good sounds.
Sean, you have a comment question. You talk about the zero position sounds, but
Okay.
so we have 11 sounds, obviously.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to work this question with you because I'm not sure if I understand it. It says when I press the special 4 button, that gives me details on what sounds are in each. Oh, custom 4. Okay.
Yes. What a good segue. That was my very next note. I have a note written up here, and that says custom 4. Okay, so if you have a touch screen, this is your favorite button, I hope. This is all your favorite button here. It's all the way on the bottom left. We've talked about it in a lot of these classes. If it's an Inspire or Rialto, it's number 3, but any other instrument here, for the most part, if it's got a big touch screen, you touch custom button number 4, and what it's going to do, it's going to put on your window here, your screen, it's actually going to tell you what's in every single button here. It'll tell you kind of a general idea of what you're going to get. You know, for example, when you touch number 1, are you going to get a jazz organ, or you can get jazz organ 2, it tells you the different types of sounds that are in there.
But 0 is not numbered. That's, I think, what the question is. 0 is at the very top.
Yeah. So with all of these, if you have something, I think it started on the Imperial or Prestige. Prestige. Yeah, everything above that, you have something in a 0 position as well. So all that means is with none of these buttons lit, no 1 through 10. If you have nothing lit, that means it's on 0, which means you still have an extra sound. So you have 0 through 10. So just to make that a little bit more clear. Okay. The next thing, actually, any other questions before I move on? I just have maybe one more cool thing that I like to use that I'll talk about. Any questions?
I don't see any questions right now.
Cool. Well, hopefully you got something out of all that, and it's not just even more confusing. I hope I didn't do that. What I like to do is not necessarily just tell you, you got these buttons, touch them, but here's what it means, That's what I get that question a lot is, what's the difference between flute 16 and 4, or these tabs? What does that mean? That's what they mean. They're the size of the flute. And I talked about today the right hand, so those are called upper tabs. And then keep in mind you also have a whole other half of this instrument where it says lower tabs. So one thing to keep in mind is if you have, just like I said on the Easy 10 I was playing, if you have maybe like a piano sound that you want a lot, you really like that piano sound, but you also hear organ in there or something doesn't sound right, there's a button right in the center of these tabs. It says upper tabs, and it's a red tab. If I turn that off, it turns off all of these. Even if the lights are on, nobody's home, okay? So even if these lights are on, if you turn off that upper tabs button, it deactivates all of these. So that's really, really good to know when you're playing with your sounds over here and you're like, this doesn't sound right. I hear organs in there. I don't want an organ. I want a piano. Turn off your organ. So touch upper tabs and it'll turn all of those off. Okay? And I see a question in the chat. What are the D and the E banks? So I talked about A, B, C. The D and E banks are just different sounds. They're not organs, so I didn't talk about them. The D bank is all orchestral sounds, things you'd see in an orchestra, like violins, cellos, something you'd see in a symphony. And the E bank is a bunch of cuckoo bananas stuff. You see things like chickens and cats and dogs and really weird stuff. So that's if you want to get goofy. You touch E. You get all the goofy stuff. So, but A through C are going to be all your good organ sounds. Organs, organs, organs. The last thing I want to talk about is organ effects. This is just really quick, just kind of a side thing. This is if you want to kind of make it more expressive with your playing. You know how when you hear a singer use vibrato, do you know what that is? You'll hear them singing and it sounds very smooth at first. Oh, and they do something like that. Probably not like that because that would look goofy, but just to kind of show you. Oh, that's what you would hear, is that's called vibrato. You can do that on your organ as well. So it's over here on the organ. It's called vibratrem. And just some history on what that is. Has anybody seen this before? That is a Hammond organ, and just unmute yourself if you know what that is next to it. What in the world is
Leslie speaker.
Leslie.
You got it. That is a Leslie speaker, which I won't get into too much how it works. But what it does is it gives it kind of a rotary sound. There's kind of a speaker in there that's spinning and going against another speaker with the low. Don't worry about it. But it makes kind of a rotary sound, and it does that what's called vibration and vibrato, what I mentioned. Yours is easy. You don't have to have all that room in your house for that giant box. All you need to do is touch a button on the left side, and if you're on an easy series, it's on the right side, just below the word organ. Okay? But it's called vibratrem, and you have a couple options. There's slow and there's fast. And on these larger ones, you could turn it off completely. So just kind of to hear what that sounds like. If I have it off completely, you're going to hear very smooth sound here. And now I'm going to change it to slow. And then now to fast. You kind of hear the difference, how it sounds like it's something spinning. Well, you can do that while you're playing, and it sounds a lot like somebody singing. So if you noticed, I kind of used that trick in the first song I played, At Last. I kept turning it on and off, and it kind of sounds like somebody using vibrato with their voice. So let me play that example again just so you can hear it. And it's really fun. It's easy. You just turn the button on and off, and it gives you that feel. So let me go back to my soul ballad. Let me do this. So when I do that, I'm going to start with it off, and then I'm going to turn it on as I go along. Here we go. Isn't that kind of cool? I'm playing the same song, just as simple. I'm just kind of hitting that button in between, and it kind of gives it that feeling. It gives it emotion. And you can do that with the button. And we've had classes on this before, so I won't get into it, but you can also put it on these touch bars. You can make it turn that feature on and off with your touch bar, or your foot pedal down below. You can make that do it. Or if you want to have fun, I like to do the pedals. If you don't use those bass pedals, you can have it do that vibratrem feature, just turning it on and off. And that works with any organ sound, okay? So whether you're playing church organs, the Lowry organs, if you use that feature, it'll always work. But it doesn't work with the other sounds. So if you try to make a piano do that, it won't do anything. So, any questions on that? Oh, I see one in the chat. Joni says on the aria, yes, and there are a couple of instruments actually too. I think on the marquee, grand marquee as well. You can send these tabs to the lower keyboard, which normally you couldn't do before. But on those, there's a tab that says send to lower right, and you can send it down here. So you can have your organ play on the bottom too. But typically, it's just always on the top, upper tabs and upper flute sounds. So, any questions? Hopefully I kept it simple enough and didn't goof anybody up.
Very clear, very made clear. Great.
Good. So just a couple things before we close out. I'm going to play a really fun song on our way out for you, just for fun, and I'm going to use some of my favorite organ sounds. I only played this song once before I started today, so hopefully I can play through it. But before I do that, I'm just going to give a couple announcements just so you know what's coming up. First of all, you probably got this email recently. It says, Holiday Savings Event, celebrate the gift of music this holiday season. Which I think this is just really pretty. Whoever made this did an epic job. It looks good. This is a nice little advertisement here. It says enjoy up to 60% off on all Lowry and ST organs. So you can, if you have any interest or you have any questions about any instruments we have, you can ask your personal assistant or local store, and we'll tell you if it's on sale, or if it's, if it's not, we'll say, darn. Oh, well. But just keep that in mind. I think that said up till December 20th on there.
Or if it's free.
Yeah, or if it's free. We might even have free stuff for you. Didn't even think of that. We also have some events coming up this month. Really, really cool stuff. We're not having one Christmas party type event. We are having 4. We're having 4 Christmas concert-themed events, but we're going to make it easy. We're actually splitting them up for you. So rather than have 4 events, we're going to do one for each group of people, so it pertains either more to your instruments or more to your group, So we're going to, rather than have hundreds of people, we're going to have nice smaller groups where it'll pertain more to you and you'll get more out of it. And we have different artists playing concerts for all of them, so we are going to have a lot of fun with that. So check your emails for updates on those as well. So we'll be doing that throughout the month of December, which, oh my gosh, it's December. I got to pay my rent. Anyway, to close us out, I'm going to play a song called Santa Claus is Coming to Town. So that's going to be on the 25th. He'll be in town, so mark your calendars. But I'm going to try to use a big, fun, big band type style for this, and I'm going to slow it down because I don't know if I can play as fast as it says here. So here we go. Santa Claus is coming to town. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. I hope you got a lot out of it, and you're gonna go play
You
your
bet. Thanks, Sean.
organ today.
Thank
Or you
you,
can say
Sean.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Good lesson, Sean.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank
well,
you.
it's very good.
Was.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
See her name? I don't see.